abandoned in the desert. Discover the incredible transformation that revealed my hidden strength. Emma sat at her kitchen table, her fingers dancing anxiously over the job listings scattered before her. Each flicker of the screen showed opportunity layering itself over her dread. The stark contrast between the bright future she envisioned for her children and the gray reality of her current situation throbbed painfully within her. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating a familiar scene. Her two kids munching away at bowls of cereal, oblivious to their mother's tightening chest and racing thoughts, still reeling from her layoff at the law firm. They deserved better, she kept telling herself. Desperation clawed at her spine. Deciding she needed air, Emma took a drive, the sweltering Phoenix heat enveloping her car like a warm blanket, heavy yet stifling. Her mind focused on the weeds that had woven themselves into the fabric of her life, choking her aspirations. Rolling past houses and neatly trimmed lawns, she wondered if her neighbors knew of her struggles. Each glance from them felt like an unspoken question. How could a single mother like her take on something more substantial, something so visibly frayed? As she parked her car near a distant hillside, Emma spotted the remnants of what seemed to be an old ranch nestled against the backdrop of a dusky sky. Rusting fences and crumbling stables hinted at a history that had slipped away just as she felt her life was doing. Instinctively, she stepped out of her car, drawn towards the dilapidated structure, a pulse of connection urging her forward. Could this be her second chance? The nagging feelings of abandonment from her grandfather, who had ghosted her mother's life, tangled with the desire to reclaim something meaningful. The land felt like an echo, mourning its lost vibrancy. Emma stood before it, heart racing, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirling within. Could she really restore this place, weave a new tapestry from broken threads? Or was it just foolishness? Further evidence of her failure as a mother? Sudden doubts left her breathless. She caught herself hesitating, staring into the golden light filtering through overgrown grass, aware of her children's laughter that mingled with the mystery of the ranch and all it represented. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension escalated as she dug deeper into her decision. Each shovelful of dirt she lifted revealed remnants of past life, ghost stories mingling with her own quest for purpose. But with each day, uncertainty churned in her gut, thrumming relentlessly. Was this endeavor a path to rediscovery or spiraling into chaos? The whispers from neighbors hinted at her lunacy. Their eyes lingered longer than was comfortable, their judgments like harsh winds lashing against her self-worth. Then came Hank, her elderly neighbor, an unexpected ally who shared lemonades and farm tips, igniting a flicker of hope. Yet, the developer's claims soon cast a shadow over this fragile progress, threatening the sanctuary she had begun to envision. Suddenly, everything hung on a precipice. Emma felt the stinging weight of fear she thought she'd conquered. As the sun dipped low, casting elongated shadows, she wrestled with the reality of her choices. Should she drop the fight, protect her children from instability, or should she risk everything for what could be their salvation? Family history intertwined with her desperate future. As darkness crept over the land, rippling with uncertainty, Emma stood on the brink, heart racing, ready to confront the truth she had both feared and yearned for. Unsettled yet resolute, she stepped closer to the precipice of her fate. Emma stood at the edge of what could be her future or her downfall. Breath caught in her throat, she assessed the landscape. The ranch, with its sagging roofs and overgrown fields, seemed like a metaphor for her own life, neglected yet filled with potential. Clenching her fists, she felt the weight of her choices pressing down, a palpable force ready to either anchor her or drown her. After days of contemplation, she had made a decision. She wouldn't let fear dictate her life any longer. Emma envisioned transforming the ranch, not just as a project but as a symbol of resilience for her children. She gathered a makeshift toolkit, glancing at her reflection in the rearview mirror, where she saw a woman determined to birth something new from decay, and set to work. The days rolled into weeks. Mornings filled with the chorus of birds announced a fresh start as she toiled. Emma learned to wield a hammer and saw, producing rough wooden frames that would soon frame the vibrant gardens she planned to create. Each swing of the hammer resonated with the heartbeat of her renewed resolve. She envisioned flower beds bursting with colors and rows of vegetables stretching towards the sun, a literal and metaphorical growth process. Often, she found herself lost in the rhythm of labor, forgetting the stares of her neighbors, who still regarded her with skepticism. But worry lurked in the periphery. The developer loomed larger, pressing claims that threatened her vision. His sharp words echoed in her mind, sowing seeds of doubt. What if she was simply setting herself up for failure? Determination settled heavily upon her heart, refusing to let it be swayed by the shadows of uncertainty. She sat on her porch one evening. The stillness masked her torrent of thoughts. "What are you afraid of?" she whispered to herself under the vast, unyielding sky. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to confront both the developer and the ghosts from her past. The next day, she donned her most professional attire, an outfit that had once signaled her confidence in the law firm. It felt strange, yet empowering, each button fastening like a pledge to herself. Armed with documents and her resolve, Emma finally marched into the local development office, a place that had become a fortress for her fears. The sleek walls and polished surfaces were intimidating, but also emblematic of what she sought to rebuild. As she stepped into the lobby, her pulse quickened. This was a place she had avoided for too long, but now it represented an opportunity for action. She demanded to speak with the developer, an encounter she had dreaded yet craved. As Emma explained her plans for the ranch, suppressing the tremor in her voice, she discovered fragments of a newfound power within. The calm confidence she had once possessed as a lawyer began to reemerge. The developer, condescending and dismissive, peppered her with doubts. "You can't change what has already been decided," he sneered. But instead of crumbling, a spark flared in Emma's chest. "Watch me," she responded, narrowing her gaze. The words left her lips before she could second-guess them. Confrontation sparked an awakening. She would not back down any longer. Emma's journey had just begun, the intersection of her aspirations and reality colliding in a blaze of determination. But could she hold her ground against rising tides of opposition? As she exited the office, her heart raced, knowing she was on the verge of something profound. The embers had ignited into flames, but could she withstand the heat that would undoubtedly follow? Emma had a choice to make: succumb to fear or embrace the transformation ahead. The stakes were higher than ever, her world hanging in the balance, the next chapter unfolding dangerously close. The morning sun spilled golden light across the ranch, illuminating both the beauty and the decay that lay before Emma. In a tangible way, the warmth seeped into her bones, energizing her spirit. She stood at the edge of her dreams, poised to carve a new path for herself. Today was the day she would begin to seek support beyond her own nascent efforts. The realization struck her sharply: she needed allies. Her first instinct was to reach out to old friends from her law days. But as she picked up the phone, her resolve wavered. It had been years since they had mingled in the professional realm. What would they think of her endeavor now, this dreamer turned gardener? Would they mock her for walking away from the promises of a lucrative career? Heart pounding, she pressed the call button anyway. Listening to the ringing, she was acutely aware of how time had stretched between them. Each ring felt like an eternity filled with self-doubt. But she steeled herself, reminding herself of the fire that had burned in her chest moments before she confronted the developer. When her former colleague, Brenda, finally answered, Emma's heart raced. Their conversation flowed awkwardly at first, but as she began to share her vision for the ranch, how she desired to transform the dilapidated property into a thriving oasis, it was as if a curtain had lifted. Brenda listened intently, amid a few pauses that hinted at skepticism. But instead of retreating under the weight of her doubts, Emma pressed on, spilling every detail of her dreams with an infectious enthusiasm. "Emma, if anyone can do it, it's you," Brenda finally admitted, her voice warm with encouragement. Conversation shifted, and Brenda offered to connect Emma with a community grant organization. They often funded local initiatives like hers. The conversation fueled Emma's spirit. By the time they hung up, She felt buoyed, seen not simply as a former attorney but as a catalyst for change. With renewed determination, she chased familiarity, reaching out to others who might harbor a similar belief in her vision. Every conversation forged deeper connections that were far removed from the memories that haunted her past. Days turned into a whirlwind of emails and phone calls. She tightened her plans, realizing how crucial efficient execution was in attracting not only funding but also volunteers who could share the labor of love. Emma carved out a presentation, her heart racing with anticipation as she prepared to outline her intentions for the ranch at an upcoming community meeting, a gathering she learned about thanks to Brenda. Yet as the hour approached, doubt began to overwhelm her. What if they dismissed her as an imposter? A slew of what-ifs could easily drown her aspirations. Emma shook her head, staring at herself in the mirror, searching for the confidence she felt earlier. There she was, a woman armed with a vision and determination. That evening, she stood before the community, hands trembling slightly as she began speaking. It was a vulnerable moment, laying bare her dreams and obstacles. But when she glanced up from her notes, she found a sea of eager faces. Some nodded and others leaned forward, genuinely interested. The more she spoke, the more resolute she became. Each word propelled her, fanning the fire of empowerment. When she concluded, a man in the back raised his hand, asking how he could help. Another offered to supply seeds from his own farm. Slowly, hands shot up, each eager to contribute in profound ways, a local farmer offering tools, families wanting to lend sweat equity. Emma left that meeting feeling lighter, as if she had shed an old skin. Her dreams were no longer solitary whispers, but a crescendo of voices combining to encourage her journey. Yet somewhere in her mind, a lingering shadow from the developer's disdain echoed what would happen when he learned of her newfound support. The turning tide of community camaraderie was exhilarating, but it steeled her for another showdown. How would she confront the developer now that her ambitions had expanded, intertwining the fates of others with her own? The next step awaited, rife with challenge and opportunity. Emma gathered her breath, preparing for what lay ahead in her unfolding saga of resilience. Little did she know, this moment of hope provoked far-reaching consequences, and the confrontation she was poised to face would shape not just her dream, but the very essence of who she had become. Emma's newfound momentum propelled her into a flurry of activity. She approached each day as a new opportunity, filling her mornings with phone calls and afternoons with meetings. The ranch began to transform in her mind from a mere vision to tangible possibilities. Yet, as her purpose solidified, the specter of doubt loomed just as large, threatening to extinguish the flame she had ignited. The frost in the air that December morning seeped into her bones as she gathered her notes to meet the developer. The meeting was set at a local cafe, convenient for some, but for Emma, it felt like walking into a lion's den. The view of the ranch outside the window reminded her why she was there. She wrapped her coat tightly around herself, trying to ward off both the cold and the chill of anxiety. As she entered the cafe, she spotted Nathan, the developer, at a corner table, fingers tapping impatiently on his phone. The sleek, polished bluster he wore like armor stood in stark contrast to the chaotic energy swarming within her. She had rehearsed her lines over and over, but seeing him face to face brought the very real threat back into sharp focus. Would he dismiss her ideas? Would he mock her resilience? "Emma," he said, a hint of condescension slipping through his charm as he greeted her. "You've amassed quite the local following in such a short time." His words stirred something dark inside her, a mixture of concern and defiance. She took a seat across from him, forcing herself to maintain eye contact. "I'm here to discuss my plans for the ranch," she stated, resolutely setting the tone for the conversation. "Plans, yes. But let us be real. Your vision is rather ambitious. This land is zoned for development. What will you do when the city sides with someone who brings revenue?" His smirk widened, exposing a sharp layer of skepticism. Emma felt the full weight of his doubt pressing against her resolve. Yet beneath that pressure, a steady pulse of determination flickered. The community wants sustainable farming and a gathering space. They see the potential for growth, not just for profits but for a shared future. You think they can stop progress? His laugh was sharp, dismissive. "I think change is possible, especially when people band together. You can choose to invest in us or bulldoze over our dreams. The choice is yours. With each word, Emma grounded herself, tapping into her training as a lawyer, her ability to argue her case with logic and heart. The conversation shifted. Emma presented her plans with passion, detailing how community input would guide sustainability and ensure the project benefited everyone, not merely lined one person's pockets. But Nathan's responses rarely wavered beyond that same dismissive tone. You think a few dinner meetings and farmers' markets will stop developers? This ranch won't fend off the inevitable. He leaned back, fingers steepling, assessing her as if she were beneath him. No, but they will create a model that other communities can follow, one that values the land and the people over profit margins. Emma felt her voice rise, the warmth of the cafe contrasting sharply with the ice-cold entrenchment of her opponent. In that moment, a flicker of respect danced in Nathan's eyes. Was it curiosity or contempt? The atmosphere thickened, tension coiling tighter around them. She sensed that she was not merely fighting for the ranch, but for her place in this fight, asserting her right to believe in something beyond revenue. I'll consider your position, he finally said, his voice modulating slightly, as if assessing the stakes in this game had altered. But don't get your hopes up. As they parted ways, Emma felt an electric charge coursing through her veins. She left the cafe with a greater sense of purpose, the exchange serving as a pivotal moment. No matter what challenges lay ahead, her voice had resonated, standing firm against someone who initially sought to undermine her. But there would be consequences. The thought crept in as a chilling reminder: how would Nathan retaliate? The battle was only beginning, and she knew this encounter was a mere prelude to the real confrontation she would face in her quest for the ranch. As she walked away, adrenaline surged. Emma was prepared for a world that might not want her dreams, but she felt ready to claim her place within it, to push back against those who wanted to silence her. Tomorrow, she would rally her supporters and strategize next steps. But in the depths of her mind, a looming question lingered: what would be the cost of standing her ground? That cost could reshape not just her dream, but the very fabric of her life. The air was thick with uncertainty as Emma made her way home, each step reverberating with the weight of her encounter with Nathan. She had stood up for her vision, but the stakes had never been higher. It was one thing to believe in her dream. It was another thing entirely to manifest it against powerful forces. That evening, she paced the confines of her living room, gripping her phone as if it were a lifeline. Thoughts raced through her mind, battling for supremacy. She couldn't afford to be disheartened. Nathan's passive concession lit a small fire within her. He had acknowledged her as a contender. But what now? How could she capitalize on that flicker of curiosity before it waned? Emma settled on the idea of a community meeting, a way to galvanize collective strength. She grabbed a notepad and began drafting an outline, her handwriting scribbling furiously over the pages. Engage the community with clarity, discuss her vision, and create an inclusive plan that highlighted their aspirations. She envisioned a gathering where everyone's voice could contribute, a reinforcement against the looming specter of corporate development. But doubts crept in, gnawing at her confidence. What if no one showed up? What if Nathan's dismissive attitude pervaded the town? The specter of inadequacy whispered in her ear. Yet, she grabbed a deep breath, reminding herself of that sudden flicker of respect from Nathan. She wasn't just another name on a list, she was a catalyst for change. As the days progressed, Emma found herself diving deeper into research to fortify her arguments against development. She sought out experts on sustainable agriculture, scoured legal documents on land use, and explored successful model projects across the country. Each piece of knowledge emerged as a weapon. The sharper her arguments, the harder it would be for anyone to dismiss her. When the day of the meeting arrived, she felt both electrified and frozen, like standing on the precipice of a cliff. She arrived early, transforming the rustic barn on the ranch into a welcoming space. Banners hung above tables filled with informative pamphlets, and she arranged chairs in a large circle symbolizing inclusivity. With each detail she meticulously adjusted, her apprehension began to shift into determination. As familiar faces trickled in, she felt the tension within her ease slightly. Conversations ignited around the room, the enthusiasm palpable. Emma took a moment to absorb the energy, smiling as she listened to the community share their hopes and ideas. They were ready to unite, and more importantly, they were ready to fight for their shared vision of the ranch. When it was her turn to speak, Emma stood before her neighbors. Her core radiated strength she hadn't known she possessed. As she laid out her vision, her voice echoed with confidence. She addressed possible concerns and outlined strategies to counter Nathan and his development plans. The more she spoke, the more the crowd leaned in, their faces animated with interest and passion. Yet, just as momentum surged, a sharp voice cut through the collective enthusiasm. "What makes you think they'll listen?" It was a neighbor's skepticism, a voice echoing Nathan's doubts. The room stilled, and Emma felt the tide of confidence slip as uncertainty pooled at the base of her stomach. She paused, heart racing, grappling with the suffocating weight of fear that seemed to swell within her. Hasn't she been battling doubt more fiercely? "Because we are stronger together," she responded, steadying herself. They can dismiss a single voice, but they can't ignore a chorus. As murmurs of agreement spread, she sensed a shift. Emma realized she was no longer just advocating for the ranch. She was kindling a movement that could empower not just her dream, but the ideals they all shared. The dialogue flourished, voices rising animatedly across the barn. The initial shadows of doubt dissipating amidst commitment and affirmation. Everyone left that day with a spark ignited within. But the question loomed over Emma: could the energy translate into real action against Nathan? As she cleaned up after the meeting, an unfamiliar sense of clarity settled in her mind. She had begun to see not just the potential of the ranch, but her own evolution as a leader. Each moment had unveiled parts of her that had long been dormant. But the storm was closing in. Riding the initial wave of excitement, she knew she would soon face Nathan and his resolute intentions once more. But with her newfound resolve, she was ready to turn the tide. What strategies would prove most effective in the inevitable confrontation ahead? And how far was she willing to go to protect what she now understood was not just about land, but about purpose? The next morning, Emma woke to the soft hues of dawn filtering through her bedroom window. A stark contrast to the internal tumult brewing within her. The success of the meeting lingered in her mind, yet the challenges ahead cast a long shadow. She sat on the edge of her bed, her fingers nervously tapping against her thighs, as thoughts about Nathan's investment proposal hung heavy in the air. She couldn't ignore the feeling that they were mere days away from a reckoning. Determined to solidify her position, Emma made a plan. She pulled out her notepad, the pages still bearing ink from the previous night's brainstorming. Today, she would reach out to potential allies, others who might join her fight. Knowing that Nathan was a formidable opponent, she needed to harness every resource available. The world of local strategies and grassroots movements had yet more secrets to reveal. She started with a few phone calls. Each conversation was a nuanced dance of persuasion, conviction echoing in her voice as she shared her vision. Many were hesitant, their loyalty to Nathan compelling them to keep their heads down. Yet with each no, she honed her craft, a lesson in resilience. How could she keep a tone of optimism amidst rejection? The art of soft persuasion began to reveal itself to her. Later that day, she met with Janet, a local farmer who had once collaborated with Nathan on another project. Janet was wary of his ambition, having witnessed the unfortunate legacy of development run amok. Over coffee, Emma presented her case, carefully weaving the threads of community impact with environmental sustainability. At the heart of her pitch was a raw honesty. This was about their lives, their home. Janet's eyes brightened with the flicker of hope as Emma spoke. "Maybe it's time for a change," she admitted, her voice steadying. "You know, it's not just about stopping Nathan. It's about what we want for our future." Emma sensed a shift as Janet leaned in, nodding with newfound purpose. This was no longer just Emma's dream. She was forging relationships, laying the groundwork of a collective vision. The revelations came swiftly. Each person she spoke with was a puzzle piece, contributing unique insights and experiences that shaped a broader strategy. Emma realized she was building not just a defense, but inspiring a vision that transcended their fears. But with every glimmer of optimism came the reality check of Nathan's looming presence. The clock was ticking, and the closer the deadline loomed for his proposal, the more her activism took on an urgent cadence. She shifted her focus towards developing a concrete action plan, mapping out steps to consolidate their voices into a resolute stance. However, doubt occasionally crept in like a persistent shadow. Was she being naive to think she could rally enough support to confront institutional power? Far from the voices within the barn, those questions echoed a whisper of concern wrapped in fear. Emma took a deep breath as she wrote. Strength is not just in numbers. It's in clarity, intent, and the urgency of purpose. My purpose matters. By evening, she found herself at her desk, the glow of her laptop illuminating her determined features. She began drafting a manifesto of sorts, an eloquent mission statement that encapsulated their shared ideals. As she wrote, words spilled onto the page, fueled by quiet fury. This document would be her guiding light. A declaration of intentions to challenge Nathan head-on. The next morning would bring the moment of reckoning. She steeled herself for the confrontation that had been hanging like a blade over her head since the meeting. The manifesto in hand, Emma felt every word resonate, slowly building her conviction into an edifice of resistance. As she left her home, readiness surged within her. She was prepared to claim her space as a true opponent to the looming tide of development. Emma understood now that this struggle was about more than land. It was about reclaiming dignity, asserting that their voices mattered. What would Nathan's next move be? How would he react to a unified front? Each question propelled her forward. The urgency of impending confrontation sending adrenaline coursing through her veins as she contemplated the tension that would soon unfold. Emma stepped outside, the cool morning air brushing against her skin, invigorating yet laced with an undercurrent of anxiety. She was acutely aware that the day ahead was laden with possibilities and dangers. The manifesto tucked safely under her arm felt like both armor and weight, bolstering her courage while also amplifying her trepidation. Her first stop was the local community center, a space that had long been a hub of activity, but recently felt overshadowed by Nathan's impending plans. As she approached, her heart raced. This was not merely a physical confrontation with Nathan. It was a psychological battle for the identity of the place she called home. Inside the center, a small gathering of supporters awaited her. Their faces reflected varying degrees of hope and reluctance, a microcosm of the broader community. Emma faced them, taking in deep breaths to calm the storm within. The initial moments felt like an exercise in vulnerability. "I appreciate you all coming," she began, her voice steady yet tinged with emotion. "We are at a crossroads. Nathan's development project could change our lives, and not for the better. We can fight this together." Here she felt her resolve solidify. As she delved deeper into the manifesto's tenets, Emma noticed the flicker of determination lighting up the eyes of her audience. She spoke of preservation, community ties, and legacy, each concept underpinned by her personal investment in the issue. It was less about Nathan, and more about what they dreamed together. This subtle shift in focus was her revelation. She was not just opposing something, she was advocating for something more profound, a future worth fighting for. The discussions grew intense, and she found herself challenged. One person questioned the feasibility of their efforts, asking, "What if Nathan's power and connections simply overwhelm us?" For a fleeting moment, doubt crept back in, but she quickly grounded herself. "Change never comes easy," Emma asserted, her voice ringing clear. "But it's not only about winning, it's about standing up for what we believe in." The words ignited a fire within her audience. Nods of understanding paired with murmurs of agreement swept through the room. She had tapped into their shared struggles, the connective tissue binding them together. By the end of the meeting, a palpable energy filled the space, and people began expressing their willingness to engage, making signs, planning door-to-door campaigns, and even organizing a public forum. Emma felt as if a collective surge had washed over them, unearthing a spirit of resistance she hadn't anticipated. As she left the center, Emma felt lighter, yet the shadows of self-doubt loomed ever nearer. Could they truly galvanize this newly minted energy into actionable change? What if Nathan retaliated sharply, propagating fears that would fracture their nascent coalition? That evening, as dusk painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, she sat on her porch with her notebook, brainstorming ways to fortify their stance against the well-funded titan. The pen became an extension of her thoughts. Each stroke seemed to underscore her belief that there was power in the written word, in clarity, in vision. But then came a chilling message. A notification chimed on her phone, breaking her concentration. Nathan had issued a public statement, lambasting her efforts and insinuating that her call to action was nothing more than a misguided nostalgia that threatened the community's growth. A wave of unease washed over her. She needed to prepare for this escalation. She thought of the road ahead, the storm brewing on the horizon, and the strength she'd already begun to unearth within herself. Each moment felt like a test of her resolve, pulling her closer to the very edge of her capabilities. Amidst this turmoil, she questioned what she was truly made of. The time had come to prepare for a confrontation that went beyond the realm of mere words. This was evolving into a genuine battle of wills. What unforeseen challenges lay in wake? In a world of muddied morals and conflict, how much of a risk would she take? The stakes were rising, and with each moment, she could feel the tension of the unknown building to a fever pitch. Emma sat in the dim light of her porch, the shadows deepening around her as the weight of Nathan's words settled in her mind. The public statement he had released swirled in her thoughts like a tempest. He had struck a nerve, painting her as a relic of the past, a whisper in a digital age of progress. Rather than demoralize her, it sparked a defiance she hadn't anticipated. The reflections danced in her mind. Was she indeed clinging to nostalgia, or was she holding the line against undesirable change? In that moment of solitude, a revelation surfaced. Emma recognized that her fight wasn't solely about the community's identity. It was also about reclaiming her own voice. The longer she sat in silence, the more she understood the importance of addressing Nathan's challenges head-on. With renewed vigor, she grabbed her notebook, tearing through pages of ideas. She began drafting a response, one that wouldn't just counter his attack, but would show what her vision truly represented. She sought to encapsulate the essence of the fight, honoring the community's past while fostering a vision for a brighter future. Her pen glided across the paper with a fervor that released her pent-up energy. She was no longer just responding to Nathan. She was articulating her purpose. Every line she wrote fortified her resolve. This is not merely about preservation, she scribbled. It's about sustaining a legacy that builds upon what we've always cherished. The plan took shape. Emma envisioned a community meeting in the town square, a central hub where her peers could openly discuss the consequences of Nathan's proposed development, and her response could galvanize support. This would be a visual reminder that their community still had a heartbeat, still stood resilient against the encroaching tide. However, doubts crept back into her accord. What if people hadn't truly bought into her message? What if they saw her as the one who stood in the way of progress, not as a visionary? Would she be able to rally their spirits again? The risks felt magnified, her ambition flickering beneath the weight of uncertainty. The challenge became clearer. She must entail the larger narrative of their community within her own story. This conflict was not merely Emma's battle, it was theirs. And for her vision to take flight, they would need to embrace it as a shared responsibility. Determined, Emma reached out to allies, those she had connected with during the previous meeting. The technological age would become her ally, her tool for reaching out and engaging others. She created a social media event, a gathering meant to ignite discussion and spark unity among her neighbors. The potential backlash lingered, but she realized that doubt was not a ponderous weight. It was an invitation to expand her determination. Days unfolded like the petals of a flower, revealing a vibrant yet complex picture. Emma found herself spending late nights refining her presentation, ensuring her address was scintillation wrapped in clarity. She also sought counsel from individuals with a firm grasp of the legal bounds surrounding Nathan's project. Each step fortified her knowledge, deepening her belief that she could turn the tide. The morning before the meeting, Emma experienced a blend of anticipation and dread, an emotional cocktail that muddled her thoughts. But as she stood facing her mirror that morning, a flicker of conviction sparked within her. She looked herself in the eye. You have to be ready, not only to present your vision, but to stand tall in opposition to his. You've come this far. With a deep breath and a final check of her notes, she stepped outside, the vibrant colors of dawn heralding a new beginning. The crowd would be watching, but she had one shot to connect, one chance to lead. Confidence surged within her, carried on the breeze. And with every step towards the square, the weight of her purpose became lighter. As Emma arrived at the venue, glancing around at the gathering crowd, she realized the stakes weren't just about the community's fate. They were about discovering her own power. But before she could speak, a familiar face emerged from the crowd, one she hadn't expected to see. Nathan, smirking from the edge, eyes glimmering with challenge. How would she address him? Was she prepared for his counterattack? The moment had arrived, and she would have to confront not just Nathan but the soul of what she stood for. Emma felt the weight of Nathan's gaze like a shroud, every ounce of her resolve clashing with the sight of his smug expression. The crowd around her buzzed with anticipation. They were here not only to witness the confrontation, but to feel the energy of the moment. She could almost sense their doubts mingling in the air, thick and suffocating. Determined not to falter, Emma considered her opening words. She took a deep breath, drawing on the energy surging within her as a shield against Nathan's looming presence. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, her voice steady despite the storm of anxiety inside her. "This gathering is about more than just a project or plans for development. It's about our story, our legacy, and what we value as a community." Around her, she noticed the flicker of recognition in some eyes, glimmers of shared history and struggles. It fueled her with purpose. She pivoted, focusing on Nathan as she continued. "I believe that change is vital, but not all change leads to progress. It is crucial to ask, progress for whom? Is it for the few who stand to gain from it? Or for all of us who have built lives here?" Nathan, crossing his arms, appeared unwavering. Yet Emma sensed a shift. There was discomfort seeping into his confidence. With each word, she felt her own voice deepen, align more firmly with her convictions. "We spent generations creating and cultivating this community, discovering strength in our traditions and values. My fight isn't against change. It's about ensuring that change honors our past." She looked past Nathan, meeting the eyes of her neighbors. "We all share a desire for growth, for opportunity. But do we want it to come at the expense of our roots? I say no. Our identity should guide our progress, not be sacrificed in its name." As she spoke, Emma noticed murmurs spread among the crowd. They were intrigued, slowly leaning in, engaging with the truth she articulated. It wasn't just her words, it was the clarity of her intentions that resonated with them. She embraced their energy, letting it coalesce into her own resolve. Yet as her passion redoubled, she caught Nathan's smirk shifting to something else, a glint of aggression. He advanced slightly, a predator on the verge of his counterstrike. Emma braced herself. Confrontation was inevitable. "Emma," he called out, his voice dripping with condescension, "while you fondly recall our roots, digital innovation isn't going away. Stubbornness won't save you from progress. It will only hold you back." His words were calculated, designed to incite doubt. Did he truly believe that? Did he see her as an obstacle, or was that how he chose to minimize her? A flicker of doubt threatened to intrude, but she thwarted it with the memory of late nights spent preparing, of connecting with allies who believed in her vision. "No, Nathan," she replied, her tone firm yet calm. "I'm not afraid of progress. I'm afraid of losing who we are." The challenge they faced had transformed into something deeply personal. It wasn't just about Nathan's ambitions or community development, but her own awakening as a leader willing to take a stand. Emma felt a swell of adrenaline surge through her. Her footing steadied in the face of adversity. She anticipated his counterattacks, yet his tactics only steeled her resolve to stay on course. Addressing the crowd again, she encouraged them to voice their concerns, to express their thoughts. After all, this was not her battle alone, it was a shared ambition to ensure that their community evolved without losing its essence. "Let us discuss how we can grow together," she proposed, inviting dialogue, sparking a cacophony of voices eager to share their vision. The meeting was invigorating, a balance between hope and truth, reframing not just her ambitions, but the narrative of what their community could become. But just as the conversation gained momentum, Nathan interrupted, his irritation spilling over. "Don't be naive, Emma. Nostalgia won't pay the bills. You think this is about community. It's about survival." The tension fractured the air. What if these words seeded doubt among her supporters? Emma's heart raced. Realizing this was the most important moment yet. Would her community listen? Or would Nathan's taunts poison their resolve? She needed to confront not only him but her own fears. The stakes had escalated unfathomably, and she had to prepare for the fallout. What might this new conflict reveal about her capabilities? Could she turn the tide against Nathan's aggression? Or was she just warming up to a battle she couldn't afford to lose? The answers lurked in the chaos of voices around her, a precipice she stood upon, braced for the next move. Days transformed into a whirlwind of activity following that fateful gathering. Emma became the embodiment of determination, her pulse pounding to the rhythm of urgency. Every morning, she woke with a renewed focus, armed with the knowledge that her voice had sparked something profound within the community. The cacophony of opposing forces only served to sharpen her resolve. She delved deeply into the legal parameters surrounding Nathan's development plans, confident that armed with facts, she could fortify their collective stance. The alliance she fostered had morphed into a formidable coalition, evolving from mere supporters into advocates of shared dreams. Emma had cultivated an atmosphere ripe for collaboration, buoyed by the shared conviction that their identities and aspirations needed protection. With each passing day, word spread about their initiative. Neighbors who had been initially hesitant rallied, contributing resources and ideas that reflected their unwavering belief in preserving their community. Emma organized workshops, inviting specialists in sustainable development to elucidate the potential for growth without forsaking their heritage. Every new connection offered a piece of the puzzle, reinforcing her mission and bolstering her confidence. One evening, amidst the skepticism of people who had doubted her since the beginning, Emma stood in front of a filled community center. The walls buzzed with excitement and anticipation. Fellow citizens echoed feelings of fear and apprehension, eager to articulate their dreams as she had. Holding the manifesto tightly in her hands, she realized it was no longer just a statement of intent, it was a declaration of resilience, a manifesto that affirmed their shared fight. As her voice rang through the hushed room, she felt solidarity throughout the crowd. Together, she implored, we are stronger than any single entity. We are a tapestry woven from diverse threads, bound together by a common dream. The fact that she could mobilize people from all walks of life testified to the power of unity, an awakening that dispelled the shadows of her earlier fears. Yet, amid the mounting support, Nathan's presence was a specter, looming larger than ever. His campaign against them had intensified, framing Emma and her efforts as whimsical fantasies against the backdrop of cold economic reality. It was a bitter irony he wielded the narrative of progress against her, attempting to demean their aspirations. Emma needed to counter that narrative, not just with fervor but with tangible plans that laid out visions where sustainability and profitability intersected. The turning point arrived unexpectedly. Nathan called a public forum to voice his proposals more strategically, his aim to override their momentum with a show of force and influence. Emma knew she had to attend, to stand firm against the tide. As the date approached, she mentally rehearsed her words, believing that she could steer the discussion toward meaningful engagement. On the day of the forum, tension crackled in the air as attendees gathered. Emma felt both anticipation and fear, aware that she stood on the precipice of a pivotal moment for everyone involved. As Nathan took the stage, showcasing gleaming visuals of his development plans, Emma felt a sense of urgency take hold. When her turn arrived, she approached the podium, unyielding in her resolve. Mr. Warner, she opened, her voice steady, your proposal presents an enticing picture of growth. But at what cost to our identity? A ripple of approval resonated among her supporters, emboldening her to continue. Imagine progress where we grow without sacrificing our community's essence, where innovation and legacy interweave. She unfurled charts from her meetings with local experts, revealing potential sustainable models that had been met with applause. We can cultivate a vision of economic viability, rooted in the history and aspirations of the people who call this place home. The booth behind her was a tangible demonstration of their community's unity, banners illustrating not just opposition, but a shared commitment to innovation. She had come full circle, from desolation to resolve. She had transformed that within herself into something powerful. In the aftermath of her presentation, she felt the tide shifting. Nathan's anger boiled. Her words stunned the audience into contemplation, prompting a dialogue that opened the floor to the very concerns he hadn't addressed. Emma had wielded her voice not as a weapon, but as a clarion call for unity and vision. As she left the stage, Emma was greeted with cheers and gratitude, her supporters reaffirming her transformation from desperate mother to powerful advocate. The air felt electric, charged with possibilities as the crowd echoed their dreams and visions for the community, dreams that now belonged to all of them. Days turned into a campaign. Their community continued to blossom through shared dialogue and confidence. Nathan's resolve softened under relentless community scrutiny, and each encounter furthered the sense that Emma had not only confronted her space, but irrevocably changed the dialogue around preservation. Slowly, even some of his allies began to question his tactics. Months later, standing on the ranch, surrounded by blooming gardens and laughter, the scars of fear transformed into vibrant patches of triumph. Emma took a deep breath, her heart swelling with pride. She had banished the shadow of self-doubt. No longer hesitant, the resilient woman who stood before her children looked back at her with solid confidence, now serving as their foundation. She was no longer just a single mother fighting for her family. She had become a beacon of hope for her community, and a testament to the power of belief. Together, they had conquered the odds, proving that strength lay not only in numbers but in unyielding determination and wholly realized purpose. From this moment on, she vowed silently, "I will always fight for our dreams." Each brush of wind against her skin was a reminder of her journey, a saga of transformation, a validation of tenacity, and an established position for herself and those she loved. Emma had become not just a protector of her family legacies, but a formidable force for a better future. The struggle had shaped her identity, firm, steadfast, and ready to embrace what lay ahead. Now, she knew this was just the beginning. Her journey had equipped her, but it had also transformed her into a true advocate for her community's future. If you want to witness more transformative journeys where others rise against the odds, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for stories that truly matter. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need inspiration to chase their own dreams. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and comment below your reactions and theories about Emma's incredible transformation. Together, let us change lives one story at a time.